How? Darius looked at her with those green eyes, and for a moment, she saw the man he used to be. How do you fix something this broken? You start by telling the truth, Mira said, and you accept the consequences. The ceremony approaches. That evening, Celeste announced that the pack would hold their annual full moon ceremony in 3 days. It was a sacred event where pack members could speak grievances and truths under the moon's light. No one could lie during the ceremony. The moon goddess herself would know. Celeste had avoided holding the ceremony for 3 years, always making excuses. But now, with a potential alliance on the line, she couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. Mira smiled to herself. This was perfect. At the ceremony, she would reveal everything. The poison, the lies, the truth about what happened to her 5 years ago. She would destroy Celeste's power in one stroke. But Celeste was no fool. 2 days before the ceremony, she cornered Mira in a hallway. I know you're not who you claim to be, Celeste hissed, her beautiful face twisted with hatred. I don't know your game, but I will find out. And when I do, I will destroy you. You're welcome to try, Mira replied calmly. But you might want to focus on your own secrets instead of mine. Celeste's eyes narrowed. What secrets? The kind that come out under a full moon, Mira said with a cold smile. That night, Celeste made her move. She tried to have Mira arrested on false charges of spying. But Marcus and the other pack members Mira had befriended stood up for her. They vouched for her character. They insisted she be allowed to stay for the ceremony. Darius, to everyone's surprise, agreed. Miss Nightshade stays, he declared, his voice stronger than it had been in years. And she will speak at the ceremony if she wishes. Celeste's face went white with rage. But she couldn't argue without revealing her own fears. Marcus looked ashamed. Because we were cowards. Because Celeste rules through fear, and we were afraid of becoming her next target. That Omega, Mira was her name, she deserved better. She deserved justice. Maybe she's getting it now, Mira said quietly. Over the next few days, Mira worked carefully. She met secretly with Marcus and other pack members who were tired of Celeste's rule. There were more than she expected. Warriors who missed the old days. Elders who remembered when Darius was a good leader. And Omegas who were suffering under Celeste's cruelty. She also watched Darius. Without knowing why, she found herself drawn to him. Not with love, that had died 5 years ago, but with curiosity. When Celeste wasn't around, he was different. Kinder. He stopped to talk with pack members. He looked at the broken buildings with genuine sadness. One afternoon, Mira found him in the garden where they had once spent that passionate night. He was sitting on a bench, staring at nothing. Alpha Darius, she said softly. May I join you? He looked up, surprised. Miss Nightshade. Of course. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Darius spoke. You must think I'm weak. Everyone does. I think you're tired, Mira replied honestly. I am, he admitted. I've made so many mistakes. Hurt so many people. There was someone once. He trailed off, his eyes distant. I was cruel to her. Unforgivably cruel. She haunts me. Myra's breath caught. What happened to her? I don't know, Darius said, his voice heavy with regret. I banished her. She was probably killed by rogues. All because I was too weak to stand up to Celeste, too afraid of losing my perfect alliance. He laughed bitterly. And look what that alliance brought me. A failing pack and a mate who controls me like a puppet. It's not too late, Mira said carefully. You could still make things right. The door was locked, but Thea had taught her how to pick locks. Inside, the room was a shrine to vanity. Mirrors covered the walls. Dresses filled multiple wardrobes. And on a vanity table, Mira found what she was looking for. A collection of small bottles. She uncorked one and sniffed. Her eyes widened. Moonsbane, a rare herb that, in small doses, caused drowsiness and compliance. In large doses, it was deadly. Celeste had been poisoning Darius slowly for years, keeping him weak and easy to control. Found something interesting? The truth begins to surface. Mira spun around. Beta Marcus stood in the doorway, his arms crossed. Her heart hammered. Had she been caught? But Marcus's eyes weren't hostile. They were knowing. You're not from Northern Ridge, are you? He said quietly, closing the door behind him. Myra's hand went to the knife at her belt. I don't know what you. Relax, Marcus interrupted. I'm not here to expose you. I'm here because I've been watching Celeste poison our alpha for 3 years, and I've been powerless to stop it. No one would believe me without proof. He nodded at the bottles. That's proof. Mira studied him carefully. Why are you telling me this? Because you're asking the right questions. You're noticing the things wrong with this pack. And he hesitated. You remind me of someone. An Omega who was banished 5 years ago. She was kind and brave, and what happened to her was wrong. I didn't speak up then. I'm speaking up now. Myra's throat tightened. What happened to her? She was innocent, Marcus said firmly. Darius did sleep with her. We all knew it. But Celeste found out and threatened to break their engagement unless Darius denied it. She orchestrated the whole public humiliation to destroy any chance of the truth coming out. Rage and vindication warred in Myra's chest. She had been telling the truth, and people had known. Why didn't anyone help her? Mira asked, her voice shaking. Their finest clothes and smiled their brightest smiles. But underneath it all, Mira sensed fear and resentment. She sat at the head table between Darius and his beta, a stern man named Marcus. Celeste sat on Darius's other side, watching Mira like a hawk watching a mouse. Tell us about Northern Ridge, Celeste said loudly enough for the entire table to hear. I've heard it's very rustic. It's strong, Mira replied. Our Alpha believes in taking care of his pack members. Every single one of them. The pointed comment made several people glance at Celeste. The Luna's smile tightened. How noble. Of course, every pack has different priorities. We believe in excellence. In beauty. In maintaining standards. Even if those standards require sacrifices? Mira asked innocently. Sacrifices are necessary for greatness, Celeste replied coldly. Darius, who had been drinking heavily, suddenly spoke up. I didn't always think that way. His voice was slurred slightly. There was a time when I believed, when I thought. Darling. Celeste cut in sharply, her hand covering his. You're tired. Perhaps we should. I'm not tired. Darius snapped, pulling his hand away. It was the first sign of resistance Mira had seen from him. I'm just remembering how things used to be. When the pack was happy. When I was different. Celeste's face went pale, then red with fury. Excuse us, she said tightly, standing and pulling Darius up with her. My mate needs rest. As they left, Mira noticed Celeste's grip on Darius's arm was bruising. And she noticed something else. Celeste had been pouring Darius's wine all evening from a separate bottle. After dinner, Mira made her move. She waited until the pack house was quiet, then slipped out of her room wearing dark clothes. She made her way to Celeste's private chambers, a set of rooms separate from Darius's own bedroom. I'm sure it is, Celeste replied, her eyes raking over Mira with barely concealed hostility. She saw every female as a threat. Come with me, Miss Nightshade. I'll make sure you're comfortable. As they walked through the hallways, Celeste maintained a stream of pleasant conversation that was laced with subtle threats. We don't get many visitors from Northern Ridge. Strange that Alpha Kieran would send a lone she-wolf on such important business. Alpha Kieran values competence over numbers, Mira replied smoothly. And I prefer to travel light. How independent of you. Celeste opened a door to a lavish guest room. This will be your room. Dinner is at sunset. I do hope you'll join us. I wouldn't miss it, Mira said with a smile that matched Celeste's fake sweetness. When Celeste left, Mira collapsed on the bed, her heart racing. Being this close to them, pretending, acting, it was harder than she'd expected. But she couldn't fail. Too much depended on her success. That evening, she explored the pack house while everyone prepared for dinner. She moved silently through the hallways, listening at doors, gathering information. What she heard confirmed her worst fears. We're running out of money, she heard a male voice say from behind a closed door. It sounded like the pack's treasurer. Luna Celeste has spent almost everything on her wardrobe and parties. The pack members are starving, and we can't even afford to repair the buildings. What about the Alpha? Another voice asked. He does whatever she tells him. It's like she has him under some kind of spell. A spell? Myra's mind raced. Thea had taught her about herbs and potions that could influence someone's mind. Could Celeste be poisoning Darius? Keeping him weak and compliant? The dinner of lies. Dinner that night was a performance. The dining hall was filled with the pack's elite, high-ranking warriors, advisors, and wealthy families. Everyone wore. The door opened, and he walked in. Myra's breath caught. 5 years had not been kind to Alpha Darius. He was still handsome, still powerful in build, but there was a tiredness around his eyes. His dark hair had threads of gray at the temples. He looked like a man carrying a weight he couldn't bear. "Miss Nightshade," he said, his voice that same deep rumble she remembered. "I'm told you have news from Northern Ridge." Mira turned slowly, making sure her face showed nothing but polite interest. "Alpha Darius, thank you for seeing me." She bowed her head respectfully, though every fiber of her being wanted to spit at his feet. His green eyes studied her, and for a terrifying moment, she thought he recognized her. But then he smiled, a politician's smile, empty of real warmth. "Please sit. Tell me about these iron deposits." They talked business for an hour. Mira had memorized everything Thea taught her about trade, negotiations, and pack politics. She played her part perfectly, a confident she-wolf from a powerful pack, considering whether Crimson Veil was worthy of an alliance. Darius was desperate. She could see it in how eagerly he discussed terms, how quickly he agreed to things. Crimson Veil was in worse shape than she'd thought. "I'll need to stay for a few days," Mira said finally, "to assess your pack's stability before I report back to Alpha Kirin. I'm sure you understand. We can't ally with a pack that might collapse." Darius's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Of course. We'll provide you with quarters in the guest wing." "Actually," a cold voice said from the doorway, "I'll show our guest to her room personally." Celeste stood there, draped in a gown of emerald silk that probably cost more than most pack members earned in a year. She was still beautiful, but there was something brittle about her now. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The Luna's suspicion. Mira stood and bowed. "Luna Celeste. It's an honor." The guards exchanged glances. "The Alpha doesn't usually meet with lone travelers." "Then perhaps you should inform him that I carry a message from Alpha Kirin of Northern Ridge," Mira replied coolly. "A message regarding the iron deposits your pack so desperately needs. I'm sure he'll make time." It was a calculated risk. Thea had told her that Crimson Veil's mines had been depleted under Celeste's mismanagement. They were desperate for resources. The mention of iron would get her inside. The guard hesitated, then nodded. "Wait here." While she waited, Mira studied the gate. It was the same one she had been thrown out of 5 years ago, pregnant and terrified. The memory threatened to overwhelm her, but she pushed it down. That Mira was gone. Sarah Nightshade stood here now. The guard returned quickly. "The Alpha will see you. Follow me." Walking through ghosts. As Mira followed the guard through the village, her heart ached. The deterioration was even worse up close. Houses that had once been well-maintained were falling apart. The gardens that used to overflow with vegetables were now mostly weeds. She saw Omega's servants moving between buildings, their faces hollow and tired. One Omega, a woman who had been kind to Mira years ago, passed within feet of her. The woman didn't recognize her. Myra's disguise was perfect, but Mira recognized the woman. She was pregnant, just as Mira had been, and she looked terrified. They reached the pack house, and Myra's stomach twisted. This was where she had been humiliated in front of everyone, where Darius had called her disgusting, where Celeste had laughed as she was dragged away. The guard led her to a large office. "Wait here. The Alpha will arrive shortly." Mira stood in the center of the room, taking in every detail. The office was luxurious, filled with expensive furniture and artwork. But there was dust on the shelves. The papers on the desk were disorganized. Even in his personal space, Darius's weakness showed. Celeste was thinner now, her beauty hardened by cruelty. She barked orders at a young Omega servant, hitting the girl when she didn't move fast enough. The Omega fell, and Celeste kicked her. Then she walked back inside, leaving the girl crying in the dirt. Mira closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Thea's words echoed in her mind. Justice, not revenge. When she opened her eyes again, they were cold and focused. She knew what she had to do. She would return to Crimson Veil, but not as Mira the Omega. She would return as someone new, someone powerful, someone who could infiltrate the pack, expose the truth, and save the innocent. She climbed down from the tree and melted back into the shadows. Tomorrow, the game would begin. Tomorrow, she would walk into the wolf's den wearing a mask. Tomorrow, Alpha Darius and Luna Celeste would meet their reckoning. But tonight, she returned to Luna and held her daughter close, remembering why she was doing this. Not for revenge. For justice. For all the broken Omegas who needed a champion. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the storm that was coming. And she would not be denied. The morning sun rose over Crimson Veil as a lone she-wolf approached the main gate. She was striking, not beautiful like Celeste, but powerful in a way that made people look twice. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders. Her violet eyes were hidden behind colored contact lenses that made them appear amber. She wore traveling clothes that spoke of wealth and status, fine leather pants, a deep burgundy cloak, and boots that had clearly walked many miles. The guards at the gate straightened as she approached. "State your name and business," the larger guard demanded, though his voice was respectful. This was no ordinary traveler. "My name is Sarah Nightshade," Mira said, her voice deeper and more confident than it had ever been. Thea had taught her how to alter her voice, her posture, her entire presence. "I come from the Northern Ridge Pack." The pack was indeed failing. She could feel it in the weakness of the border patrol, in the way the territory markers hadn't been refreshed properly. Darius's reign was crumbling. Perfect. Mira found a hidden cave near the border where she settled Luna with supplies. "I need you to be very brave," she told her daughter. "Stay here and stay quiet. Aunt Thea taught you the hiding games, remember?" Luna nodded solemnly. "You're going to help people, right, Mama? Not hurt them." "I'm going to do what needs to be done," Mira promised. She kissed Luna's forehead. "I'll be back before the moon rises. I promise." As night fell, Mira slipped across the border, her scent masked by Thea's herbs. She moved like a shadow through the forest she had once known so well. Guards passed within feet of her hiding spot and never saw her. She had become invisible by choice, not by weakness. She reached the edge of the pack village and climbed a tall oak tree to observe. What she saw made her heart ache. The village was in disrepair. Houses had broken windows and sagging roofs. She could see omegas moving between buildings, thin and exhausted. Children played in the dirt, their clothes patched and worn. And in the center of it all, the pack house stood gleaming and perfect. Lights blazed in every window. She could hear music and laughter. While the pack starved, their leaders feasted. Myra's hands clenched into fists. Not from rage, though she felt plenty of that, but from determination. These people needed help. They needed someone strong enough to stand against Darius and Celeste. Someone who understood their suffering because she had lived it. They needed her. As she watched, a she-wolf stumbled out of the pack house, clearly drunk. Even from a distance, Mira recognized her. Celeste, the woman who had destroyed her life. The woman who had called her a whore and laughed as she was banished. Darius, not for revenge, but because you are strong enough to help those who can't help themselves. Mira thought of Luna, sleeping peacefully in the next room. She thought of all the Omegas still trapped in Crimson Vale, still being abused and humiliated. She thought of Darius and Celeste, living in luxury while their pack suffered. And she thought of the woman she had become. The warrior. The survivor. The mother. "If I go back," Mira said slowly, "I'm not going as a victim. I'm not going to beg for forgiveness or acceptance. I'm going as someone they should fear." Thea smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "Now you're thinking like a Luna." The next morning, Mira stood at the edge of the clearing, looking toward the direction of Crimson Vale territory. She wore leather armor that Thea had helped her make, fitted with hidden knives. Her hair, once limp and dull, now fell in a strong braid down her back. Her violet eyes, which had always been considered strange, now gleamed with purpose. Luna held her hand, the little girl sensing her mother's determination. "Where are we going, Mama?" "To right a wrong," Mira said softly. She looked at Thea. "Will you watch her while I—" "No," Luna said firmly, her small face serious. "I go where Mama goes." Thea laughed. "She has your spirit." "Very well. But remember, Mira, revenge is a poison that destroys the vessel holding it. Go for justice. Go for truth. But not for revenge." Mira nodded. She lifted Luna onto her hip and started walking toward Crimson Vale. With each step, her resolve grew stronger. She wasn't the broken Omega anymore. She was something far more dangerous. She was a mother with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The return begins. As they approached the Crimson Vale border 3 days later, Mira could smell the familiar scent of her old pack. Once it had meant home. Now it smelled like lies and betrayal. But underneath that, she could sense something else. Fear, desperation, suffering. A strong name, Thea approved. She will need strength in the years to come. Raising Luna in the cabin was both the hardest and most beautiful thing Mira had ever done. Thea helped, teaching Mira how to be a mother while continuing her other lessons. Luna grew fast, a happy child who laughed easily and asked endless questions. By the time Luna was 5 years old, Mira had transformed completely. She was no longer the scared, broken Omega who had stumbled into the forest. She was a warrior. Her body was strong from training. Her mind was sharp from Thea's lessons in strategy and pack politics. She could fight, heal, track, and survive in any condition. But the biggest change was inside. The timid girl who had begged for Darius's mercy was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth. A woman who would never beg again. The call to return. One afternoon, a traveling merchant passed near their cabin. Thea traded herbs for supplies and news. What she heard made her face grave. She waited until Luna was asleep that night before telling Mira. Crimson Veil is failing, Thea said quietly. Alpha Darius has proven to be a weak leader. His mate, Celeste, rules him with fear and manipulation. She's drained the pack's resources for her own luxury while pack members starve. There are whispers of rebellion. Myra's hand tightened around her teacup. Good. They deserve to suffer. Do they? Thea challenged. All of them. Even the Omegas who are suffering just like you did? Even the children who are going hungry? Even the elders who are being cast out when they become too old to work? Mira looked away, shame heating her cheeks. Thea was right. The pack had many innocent members who didn't deserve to suffer for Darius's cruelty. What are you saying? I'm saying you have a choice, Thea replied. You can stay here, safe and hidden. Or you can return to Crimson Veil and save the pack from itself. Not for. I'm an Omega, Mira said bitterly. Weak. Powerless. What can I become besides a victim? Thea's eyes flashed. I was a Luna once. The most powerful Luna in the Northern Territories. My mate betrayed me for a younger she-wolf, just like yours did. He tried to kill me to cover his shame. But I survived, and I learned something important. Rank is not destiny. Power is not given. It is taken, earned, and forged in fire. Myra's mouth fell open. You were a Luna? For 30 years, Thea said. I know combat, politics, healing, and magic. And I will teach you all of it. Your Omega blood doesn't make you weak, Mira. It makes you underestimated. And that is the greatest weapon you could ever have. Over the next weeks, as winter settled over the forest, Mira began to heal. Thea was true to her word. Every day, she taught Mira something new. How to fight with daggers and staffs. How to read people's lies in their body language. How to use herbs for healing and for harm. How to mask her scent and move silently. Why are you doing this? Mira asked one snowy afternoon as she practiced knife throws. Thea smiled sadly. Because someone did it for me once, long ago. And because I see something in you, child. A fire that refuses to die. You will need that fire for what's coming. What's coming? Your daughter, Thea said simply. The birth of hope. 5 months later, on a spring night when the moon was full and bright, Mira went into labor. Thea delivered the baby with steady, experienced hands. When the first cry filled the cabin, Mira wept with joy and fear. A girl, Thea announced, placing the tiny bundle in Myra's arms. Small but fierce. Listen to those lungs. Mira looked down at her daughter and fell instantly in love. The baby had a tuft of dark hair and eyes that would probably be green like her father's. But she had Myra's delicate features. She was perfect. Luna, Mira whispered. Her name is Luna. Power did she have to scare rogues like that? Thea knelt beside Mira, her wrinkled hand touching Myra's forehead. Her touch was warm and gentle. You're burning with fever, child. And you're with child yourself? I see. Come. My cabin isn't far. You'll be safe there. Why? Mira whispered. Why would you help me? The old woman's eyes were sad and knowing. Because I was once where you are now. Betrayed. Banished. Left to die. But I survived, and so will you. Now come, before you freeze to death. Thea helped Mira to her feet and supported her as they walked. The cabin appeared after just a few minutes, hidden among ancient oak trees. It was small but cozy, with smoke rising from the chimney and herbs hanging from the rafters. The moment they stepped inside, warmth surrounded Mira like a blanket. Thea settled her on a bed piled with furs and blankets. She made a tea from dried herbs that tasted bitter but immediately soothed Myra's pain. Sleep now, Thea said softly. When you wake, we'll talk about your future. Mira wanted to argue, to ask questions, but exhaustion pulled her under. She slept for 2 days straight, her body finally safe enough to rest. Learning to survive. When Mira finally woke, she found Thea sitting by the fire, stirring a pot of stew. The old woman smiled. "Welcome back to the living. How do you feel?" "Confused," Mira admitted. She sat up slowly, her hand going to her stomach. "The baby? Strong and healthy," Thea assured her. "You, however, need rest and food. But first, tell me your story." Mira told her everything. The night with Darius. His denial. The public humiliation. The banishment. By the end, she was crying again, all the pain and betrayal pouring out. Thea listened without interruption. When Mira finished, the old woman nodded slowly. "The alpha who denied you is a fool. But his loss is your gain, child. You are free now. Free to become whoever you choose to be." She walked for hours, not knowing where she was going. Her feet were bleeding. Her dress was torn from thorns and branches. Every shadow seemed to hide danger. This was the neutral territory between packs, a lawless land where rogues hunted and mercy didn't exist. Just before dawn, Mira collapsed beside a frozen stream. She was so cold she couldn't feel her fingers. The baby. She had to protect the baby. But how could she? She was going to die out here, alone and forgotten. Well, what do we have here?" A rough male voice made her eyes snap open. 3 rogues stood over her, their clothes dirty and their eyes hungry. Rogues were wolves without packs, usually criminals or exiles. They survived by stealing and killing. The largest one, a man with a scarred face, grinned down at her. "A pretty little Omega, all alone. This must be our lucky night, boys." Mira tried to run, but her body was too weak. She managed to crawl a few feet before rough hands grabbed her. She screamed, fighting with every bit of strength she had left. "No, please. I'm pregnant." The rogues laughed. They didn't care. Mira closed her eyes, praying for a quick death. At least the baby wouldn't suffer long in this cruel world. Then a voice rang out, clear and powerful. "Release her. Now." The healer's gift. The rogues froze. An elderly woman stepped out of the shadows, leaning on a wooden staff. She was small and thin, with long silver hair and eyes that seemed to glow in the pre-dawn light. She didn't look threatening at all, but the rogues backed away from Mira immediately. "Thea," the scarred rogue whispered, his voice filled with fear. "We didn't know this one was yours." "She is now," the woman said calmly. "Leave, and tell your pack leader that if any rogue touches a woman under my protection, I will turn his bones to dust." The rogues ran. They literally ran, crashing through the forest like terrified children. Mira stared at the old woman in shock. Who was she? What kind of? Her knees under the weight of it. "I have never touched you. I would never touch something as pathetic and lowly as you. You disgust me." Tears streamed down Myra's face. "Please, I'm pregnant. The baby is yours. I just need." "Whose baby is it really?" Celeste's voice was poison-sweet. "How many males have you spread your legs for, hoping one would claim you? You're a desperate, lying little whore." The pack members began to whisper and laugh. Mira heard the cruel words being thrown at her from all directions. Pathetic, delusional, shameless. Some of the male wolves she served daily looked at her with disgust, as if she had personally offended them by existing. Darius raised his hand, and silence fell. "You have disrespected me, my mate, and this entire pack with your lies. I reject you, not as a mate, because you never were, but as a member of this pack. You are banished. You have until sunrise to leave Crimson Vale territory. If you're found here after that, you will be killed, cast into darkness." Mira couldn't breathe. Banishment was a death sentence, especially for a pregnant Omega. Without a pack, she would be vulnerable to rogues, wild animals, and starvation. "Please," she sobbed. "Please, I have nowhere to go. I'll die out there." "Then die," Celeste said with a sweet smile. "The world has too many Omegas anyway." The guards grabbed Myra's arms and dragged her out of the hall. She screamed and begged, but no one helped. These people had known her since she was a child. She had served them, cared for them, and worked until her hands bled. But not a single wolf spoke up for her. They threw her out the main gate with nothing but the thin servant's dress on her back. The autumn night was cold, and frost crunched under her bare feet. Mira stumbled into the forest, her sobs echoing through the trees. Behind her, she could hear the celebration continuing, music and laughter drifting on the wind. Perfectly styled, and his green eyes gleamed with satisfaction. At 28, he was in his prime, the strongest alpha in the region. Every pack wanted an alliance with Crimson Veil. Alpha Darius, Mira whispered, her voice barely audible. May I speak with you? Privately? It's important. Celeste's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing. Did this Omega just address you directly? Without permission. Her voice was silk wrapped around steel. Darius finally looked at Mira. His expression was cold and distant. What could you possibly have to say to me that requires privacy? Myra's courage almost failed. The entire hall had gone quiet, all eyes on her. But she thought of the tiny life growing inside her. She had to be brave. It's about us. About that night during the harvest moon. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Celeste began to laugh. It was a high, mocking sound that made Myra's skin crawl. Oh, this is rich. This pathetic little Omega thinks she had a moment with you, darling? Darius's jaw tightened. His eyes flashed with anger. I don't know what fantasy you've created in your mind, Omega, but there was no us. There was no night. You are nothing to me. You've always been nothing. The words hit Mira like physical blows. But I'm carrying your lies. Celeste shot to her feet, her face twisted with rage. How dare you try to trap my mate with such obvious lies? Guards, this Omega has insulted the Alpha. She's trying to destroy our union with her desperate fantasy. No, please. Mira backed away as two large guards approached. I'm telling the truth. Darius, you know I'm telling the truth. That night in the garden, you told me I was beautiful. You held me. Darius stood slowly, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. His alpha power rolled out like a wave, pressing down on everyone present. Mira fell too. Myra's hands trembled as she carried the silver tray of crystal glasses through the grand hall. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, but for her, it felt like a funeral. The Crimson Veil Pack was celebrating their alpha's engagement to Celeste Moonfire, the most beautiful she-wolf in 3 territories. Mira was just an Omega, the lowest rank, a servant who cleaned floors, washed dishes, and stayed invisible. But 3 months ago, everything had changed during the Harvest Moon Festival. Alpha Darius had found her alone in the garden, crying after another day of harsh treatment. He had been kind that night, gentle. He had wiped her tears and told her she was beautiful. One thing led to another, and they shared a passionate night under the stars. It was the most wonderful night of Myra's life. She thought maybe, just maybe, he had seen her as more than a servant. But the next morning, Darius acted like nothing had happened. He walked past her without a single glance. And now, 3 months later, he was engaged to Celeste. The worst part? Mira was carrying his child. She had discovered it 2 weeks ago when the pack healer examined her after she fainted in the kitchens. The healer's eyes had gone wide with shock, but she promised to keep the secret. Now, looking at Darius laughing with his beautiful bride-to-be, Mira knew she had to tell him. He deserved to know. Maybe he would even call off the engagement. How foolish she was. The cruel truth. More wine, Omega. Celeste's sharp voice cut through Myra's thoughts. The blonde she-wolf held out her empty glass without even looking at Mira. Her golden dress sparkled under the chandelier lights, and diamonds dripped from her neck and wrists. She was everything Mira wasn't. Powerful, confident, and breathtakingly beautiful. Mira poured the wine carefully, her heart pounding. Darius sat beside Celeste on his throne, looking like a king in his black suit. His dark hair was